discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. I got revenge. My life has been one long battle for respect, a battle I didn't even know I was fighting until recently. You see, I've always lived in the shadow of my sister, the golden child. For some background, I'm 29 years old, and my sister Emily is 31. From the moment I can remember, she was the one everyone adored. She was the pretty one, the smart one, the talented one. Our parents treated her like she could do no wrong, and I was always the runner-up, the afterthought. If Emily got an A on her school project, my B+ was a disappointment. If Emily wanted to try a new hobby, she'd be signed up the next day, fully equipped with everything she needed. I, on the other hand, had to beg for the simplest things. Even then I'd often hear, "Why can't you be more like Emily?" Our parents weren't outwardly cruel to me. They didn't scream or hit, but it was the subtle ways they showed favoritism that cut the deepest. The extra attention, the whispered praise, the way their eyes lit up when Emily entered a room. They made me feel invisible. Growing up, it was like this invisible competition that I didn't even want to be a part of. Yet, I was constantly being compared to her. Emily was prom queen, the star athlete, the one with perfect grades. And me? I was the troubled one, the one who rebelled, skipped school occasionally, and started wearing dark clothes just to stand out, to feel like I existed. Every time I tried to have a serious conversation with my parents about how I felt, they brushed it off. "You're just jealous," they'd say. "Emily's such a great role model for you. Why can't you just be happy for her?" It got to the point where I started doubting myself, thinking maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Or maybe I was destined to always be second place in my own family. It weighed on me, and as a result, my self-esteem hit rock bottom. I started distancing myself from them in my late teens. If they weren't going to appreciate me, I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to impress them anymore. Then came college. Emily, of course, got into a prestigious university with a full scholarship. Meanwhile, I scraped by and had to take out student loans to afford my education at a smaller state school. I studied hard and managed to graduate with decent grades, but of course, my achievements were overshadowed by Emily's perfect life. She graduated summa cum laude, landed a great job at a top firm, and got engaged to her perfect fiancé. My parents threw her an extravagant graduation party, complete with catered food, fancy decorations, and endless praise. When I graduated, they gave me a card and a pat on the back. No party, no celebration. Just the usual, "Good job, but Emily." The worst part was, Emily wasn't even a bad person. She was kind to me, most of the time, but even she couldn't see the problem. She had been raised on a pedestal, and I don't think she ever realized how much it hurt me to live in her shadow. To her, we were just siblings. To me, it felt like I was invisible. But here's the thing. Life isn't a straight path, and karma has a funny way of working things out. Fast forward a few years, and Emily married her perfect fiancé in a grand wedding that could have been pulled straight from a magazine. I was a bridesmaid, of course, standing by her side, smiling through the speeches about how amazing she was, about how proud our parents were of her. I don't know how I managed to get through it without bursting into tears or storming out, but I did. After her wedding, the comparisons continued, but I was used to them by now. Emily and her husband moved to a big city, and I stayed in our hometown, working a modest but fulfilling job. I didn't care about wealth or status. I just wanted to live my life on my own terms. Then, about a year ago, something happened that changed everything. I started my own small business, an online store selling handmade crafts and designs. It was a passion project, something I had worked on quietly without much fanfare. To my surprise, it took off. Orders started pouring in, and before I knew it, I was making more money than I ever had in my life. I was so proud of what I had built. Of course, my parents didn't really notice. They still asked about Emily's latest promotion, about her glamorous life in the city. But here's the kicker. Emily's perfect life wasn't so perfect after all. A few months ago, I got a call from my mom. She was frantic, telling me that Emily's husband had left her. He'd cheated on her and decided to move to another country to be with his new girlfriend. Emily was devastated. She lost her job shortly after, unable to cope with the emotional toll of everything that was happening. Suddenly, the golden child wasn't so golden anymore. And here's where the tables turned. For the first time in my life, my parents started paying attention to me. They realized I had become successful, that I was thriving. It was a shock to them, I think, to see that the troubled child they had ignored for so long was now the stable one. Emily, on the other hand, was falling apart. She moved back in with our parents, struggling to pick up the pieces of her life. And suddenly, they turned to me for help. "You should be there for your sister," they said. "She's going through a tough time." I couldn't believe it. After years of being overlooked and disregarded, they expected me to drop everything and support the person who had always been their favorite. The person who had always gotten everything I had ever wanted. Attention, love, praise. I'll admit, there was a part of me that wanted to just walk away, to let them deal with the consequences of their actions. But instead, I saw an opportunity for something else, something that would finally let me have my moment. I decided to help, but I wasn't going to make it easy for them. If they wanted my help, they were going to have to acknowledge the years of neglect, the years of favoritism. I made it clear to my parents that I wasn't doing this out of the goodness of my heart. If they wanted my support, they needed to understand that this wasn't just about Emily. It was about me, too. I sat them down, and for the first time in my life, I laid everything out on the table. I told them how they had always treated Emily as the golden child, how they had ignored me and made me feel like I was never good enough. I told them how it had impacted me, how it had affected my self-esteem, and how I had spent years trying to prove myself to people who didn't even notice. They were shocked, to say the least. I think they had always been so blinded by their love for Emily that they hadn't even realized what they were doing. My mom started crying, saying she had never meant to hurt me, that she thought I had always been fine. My dad just sat there, stunned, but I didn't let them off the hook. I made it clear that if they wanted my help with Emily, they needed to own up to their mistakes. They needed to admit that they had been unfair to me, that they had favored her, and they did. They apologized, really apologized, for the first time in my life. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was one I had needed for years, and it felt good, really good. As for Emily, I helped her get back on her feet. I used my business connections to help her find a new job. We're not as close as some siblings, but for the first time, we have a relationship that feels more equal. She's no longer the perfect golden child in everyone's eyes, and I'm no longer the overlooked sibling in the background. I'm my own person, and I've finally earned the respect I deserve. In the end, my revenge wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about finally standing up for myself, about making sure that I wasn't invisible anymore. And now, I'm in control of my own life, and it feels damn good. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about finding your own path and making sure no one ever takes your worth for granted again.